Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to Geeks Watch. I just finished watching the second half of season two, part two. My last review, I did season one of the first half of season two because why not? But I wanted to do this review quickly because I knew I couldn't watch anything else without doing the review first, because then I would just forget stuff. So I'm also going to do a spoiler minute a bit later in the episode, which I don't normally do. So I'm going to put like a little thing in the doobie-doo below about what the timestamp the timestamp of when I start to talk about the spoiler stuff. But first, I'm just going to give a general overview of the second half of season two. So, real quick, I do think the second half of the season was stronger than the first half. It's only 4 episodes, but they really crammed a lot in there. They really, really did. And they really did some good character development in the second half of season two. That, there was one episode in season one that I complained about, mostly, teenage romance drama that I'm just so sick of because I've seen so much of it, that I felt that episode itself felt like it had a lot of filler material. I mean, it had some stuff in it, but the overall feel of that episode was just filler. It didn't really seem to really mean anything in the grand scheme of things. There was some of that in the second half, but it felt more grounded and felt more necessary to the story. So whatever teen romance was in this second half of the season didn't feel like it didn't feel like it didn't belong. It felt like it belonged. It felt like it was important and impactful. And there is some impact in season two. There was some stuff in season one as well, but second half, the first half of season two, but they really carry everything forward. It's just a good, solid, continuous story. I'm also a bit more forgiving on the animation after the second half. It hasn't improved. I'm just a bit more forgiving. And if you want to find out why, you're going to have to either wait for the spoiler minute or watch it yourself. But my complaint about the animation is that, it feels like a Saturday morning cartoon that I would have watched in the 80s. The animation is kind of that quality. And I just feel they could have done better, but as I said, I'm going to be a bit more forgiving. What else can I say? Just that all the characters really seem to get their own space, their own development. It's not. Mark is the main character as the hero Invincible. Eve gets her own stuff. Mark's mother Debbie gets her own stuff. Donald gets his stuff. Rex, Immortal. All these characters have their own stories that are told in the second half of the season, following through from the first half of season two. They just really, really did such a good job writing. It does deviate from the comic books quite a bit. It feels like they've, to me at least, I'm familiar with the comic stories. I didn't read them, but after watching season one, I kind of went through and went on Wikipedia and other websites just to get a general overview of what the original story was. So I kind of know where they're going with a lot of these stories, even though I've never read them. I know who the characters are, the main characters are. I know who has not yet been introduced, who definitely will be. But they've also got some solid voice actors. But anyway, they've changed it from, they did some switch ups in season one by having Nolan kill the Guardians in the beginning episode, as opposed to like a year later. And they've done stuff similar to that too, where they've just taken the stories and condensed them down either to single episodes or split them across 2 episodes, instead of taking like in the comic books, the stories would have taken like a year of time or so in the written comics. So I'm curious as to how they're going to follow through with that. I get a feeling that they've cut out chunks with certain story arcs. Not that I'm complaining. I think that it's solid. there's one kind of uh, plot armor point. Not plot armor, Deus Ex Machina. Like the way that that particular storyline resolved was kind of like kind of quick and kind of not well done. But anyway, back to the point I digressed from earlier. You know, not just J.K. Simmons for the voice of Nolan as Omni-Man, but you've also got whoever the voice actor is for Optimus Prime being, is it Thaddeus? Anyway, I recognize his voice right away. Mark Hamill does a voice. General Krieg is voiced by, I can't remember the actor's name right now, but he's a solid voice actor too. They've just got some heavy hitters, really, and some really good voice actors too. When I recognize the voices, I go and look up. Oh, I know this voice. You know, tick, 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 tick. Who is this voice? Oh, cool. I like that guy. But yeah, the second half of the season is just, I think, even more solid than the first half of season 2. If you like the Invincible, give it a shot. I really, really would recommend it. Even if you don't particularly know anything about Invincible, if you do like the superhero genre and animated shows, just watch them all. Watch season 1 and 2. It's really, really well done. I prefer it to The Boys. You know, The Boy. This feels like a Saturday morning cartoon that, you know, I would with adult themes, as opposed to The Boys, which is just, what if superheroes were evil? So this is, you know, it's but I think the Boys is probably more grounded in reality. What would happen if superheroes really exist? This has a bit more. It's not quite as depressingly dark as The Boys. It's got some darkness, believe me. And every single episode is solid enough it deserves its own review, instead of just a quick 7-minute blurb here, which I have drawn out with my ramblings. Anyway, now I'm jumping to the general view. We're going to start spoiler minute. I have no idea how long the spoiler minute is going to last, but it's starting now. The main episode of this second half of the season seems to be trauma. Mark is dealing with a lot of trauma, both, you know, in the first half of the season, he was dealing with the trauma of what his father did at the end of season 1. Then he's dealing with his father coming back into his life and kind of guilt tripping him into helping him save the Thraxans, saving his younger half brother who he knew nothing about because his father started an affair with the Thraxan alien, dealing with that crap. You know, his father being captured, now to take his son back to Earth and have his mother raise him. His mother Debbie's dealing with her own crap of her own trauma of her husband betraying everyone and doing all that, causing all that death and suffering to season 1. You know, people finding out who her husband was in the first half. You know, she's just dealing with stuff. It's her trauma. But then you've got Rex dealing with the loss of his team, almost dying by being shot in the head and somehow surviving, having his hand bitten off, coming to terms with his own being just a huge douchebag and not knowing why he does that. Eve dealing with the trauma of trying to help people and failing and just causing, you know, with her mistakes, causing more harm than good. Donald dealing with his trauma, finding out he's a rebuilt robot that, you know, and then finding out that every time he's died, they've rebuilt him and brought him back. And then having to do that to, what was it? William, the boyfriend of Mark's college roommate. Not just Mark, Amber trying to deal with being, you know, Mark's boyfriend, the trauma of her being, you know, threatened by Anissa, and the, you know, that aspect too, just Mark and Amber's relationship. They try so hard to make it work, and then they break up. you know, like I said, every episode deserves its own review. There's just so much going on here. Um, Alan the alien waking up being stronger, like his body doing the Super Saiyan thing where he heals himself from severe damage and comes back stronger than ever. Every time he heals himself, he gets stronger, kind of thing. To reveal that Thaddeus is a rebel, Viltrumite, which I knew from the comics. More trauma with Angstrom, dealing with his trauma. You know, threatening Mark's family, forgetting that the original Angstrom wanted to do good, but then having all the memories of all the other thousands of Angstroms across the multiverse and all the evil that Mark Grayson's done in other universes as Invincible, and that becoming his primary personality, taking revenge on the Invincible family for all the trauma they've caused across the multiverse. And then Mark killing him, losing his temper and going enraged and beating his brains out. Literally. That's trauma for Mark too. That was the one part that I had a problem with. He kills Angstrom, and the Guardians of the Future show up and send him home. It's like, instead of being, you know, in the comic books, he's trapped there for, you know, the story with Angstrom in the comic books stretches out over a long period of time. In this, it's kept to a couple of episodes. And that one episode is just the one big thing, and everything else is just minor backstory. Well, it's the first story of Angstrom being introduced. That episode where that was resolved. Man, there's just so much good stuff. I really like the stuff with Nolan, Omni-Man being captured after Nolan and Mark successfully defend the Thraxans from the Viltrumites, still winding up being captured in the end and being taken back for execution. Then they heal him up. You know, just the interactions with him and Krieg, and then the interactions with Nolan and Alan the alien. Alan the alien getting himself captured, you know, so he can possibly find Nolan, break him out of prison to come back and help fight the other Viltrumites. Nolan really has come a long way. He realizes what he did on Earth was unforgivable. He knows he has no right to ask for forgiveness. He's willing to die to pay for his sins. But you know, Alan trying to convince him, like, dying for your sins won't help anyone. It's just self-pity. You know, let me break you out of prison, and we can go try and do some good to undo the damage you've caused. You know, try and make up for the damage you caused. They didn't break out yet. That's probably going to be in season 3. Season 3 is confirmed. I cannot wait for season 3, just because the way that this ended, and they really ramped it up for season 2, especially the second half of season 2. I'm not sure what else I can talk about. I guess that wasn't too much of a spoilers, tiny spoilers, but I wanted to rant about some of that stuff. Oh, one more thing, and that's the reason I wanted to do the spoiler minute. I almost forgot, because I don't write scripts. The main thing I wanted to talk about was the Comic-Con episode. The episode. That was the episode where Amber was threatened by Anissa too. But Mark and Amber are trying to patch up their relationship. They go to Comic-Con. Mark meets this guy he's a fan of, and this is what made me not be as critical of the animation, because I was laughing my ass off. Because when Mark starts asking this guy about when the next season of his favorite animated show is coming out, the guy's response was, well, you know, animation takes a lot of time. Mark was like, yeah, I know those guys must work really hard, especially those battle scenes. Like, yeah, we spent a lot of money. We spent a lot of money in the battle scenes, but we cut corners in other places. Mark's like, what do you mean? And the guy was like, did you ever notice when, like, people will hold something over their mouths so you can't see their mouths moves? So, you know, like the guy like signed Mark's comic book and like, you know, when they don't have to animate the guy's mouth moving if he's holding something in front of his face. And Mark is like, I never thought of that, really. I guess that's true. And this guy goes through all the ways that they cut corners in animation by not having to animate. Like, you know, when you have the pan up shot of the crowd and the camera's like doing the panning shot, but you don't notice none of the figures are moving. So, you know, and he details like 4 or 5, maybe like 6 different animation tricks that they use to cut costs and cut corners. And every time he does it, they do an example of it in scene. It's meta, I guess is the word you'd use for it today. I loved it. I really loved it. It made me sit here in my chair and just start laughing out loud. I'm surprised my wife didn't hear me in the next room. I did ask her, she said no. But I'm just sitting here in my chair with my headphones on, just giggling my ass off because I loved it. The fact that they acknowledged that the animation is sometimes crap, the fact that they did it in that way was just beautiful. And I'm really glad they did it, and it made me love the season even more. I loved it. So that's my spoiler minute, which lasted, what, 7.5 minutes? So go watch Invincible. I hope you like it, if you're not liking it already. As always, thanks for watching. If you like my crap, I don't know what to say anymore. I've never said anything, so I've always said my stuff is crap. And until next time, good hunting.